I'm not going to cut them out, but you're going to cut them out and glue them in, and then we will talk about it. So this should be at the bottom. We're going to talk about how fast can you run after we've worked this out. It says fill out the table below to determine the runner's speed in miles per hour. So we look at the table, and Ben ran a half a mile in 1.4 hours. So we want to know how many miles he would run in 1 hour. This is just a proportion. So if I can run 1/2 mile in 1/4 of an hour, I want to know how far I can run in 1 hour. Well, I know that 1/4 times 4 will give me 1 whole. And so I'm going to do the same thing to my miles times 4. So 1/2 times 4, which is 4 over 1, it's going to give you 4 halves, which simplifies to 2. So I can run 2 miles in 1 hour. Okay, so let's go over that one more time. Proportionally, if I can do a 1/2 mile in 1/4 of an hour, then I can run 4 times that much in 1 whole hour. So 4 times 1/2 gives me 2. So we do the same thing with David. David can run 3/4 of a mile in a 1/2 hour. So ask yourself, how do I get from 1/2 to 1 whole? Well, I know that I'm going to have to double this, right? Which means I'm also going to double this. So 3/4 times 2 over 1 gives me 6 over 4, which simplifies to 1 2/4, or 1 1/2. So I can run 1 1/2 miles per hour. Okay, so if you want to put MPH right there instead of miles, I should have been reading that more carefully. Let me wipe that out and fix it. So this should say miles per hour. Sorry about the shaking, my stand's a little wobbly this morning. Okay, same thing on the top one. This should say miles per hour. Okay, then we have Jill. Jill's a similar situation. We ran 1/4 of a mile in a 1/2 hour. So again, how many times do I need to multiply that 1/2 hour to get to 1 whole? 2. So I'm going to double 1/4. 1/4 times 2 over 1 gives me 2/4, which simplifies to 1/2. So I'm running a 1/2 a mile per hour if I'm Jill. And then we have Janet, who can run a 1/2 a mile in 3/4 of an hour. To get from 3/4 to 1 whole is a little bit trickier. We need to figure out what we have to multiply 3/4 by to get to 1 whole. So I'm going to move over here where I have more space. I know I'm doing 1/2 mile in 3/4 of an hour. And I want to know how many miles I run in 1 hour. When you have something like this, instead of doing the proportional reasoning like you do up here, what you may want to do is use our cross multiply and divide method. So to do that, you multiply the two numbers that are diagonal in the proportion. So 1/2 times 1 is 1/2. And then you're going to divide by the number that's left out. So divided by 3/4. But we do not divide by fractions. What do? We multiply by the reciprocal, which is 4/6, which is 2/3. So that means that this is 2/3 miles per hour. So I've shown you 2 different ways to solve proportions. We can use our proportional reasoning, which earlier in the year we've put into a proportion table, and we'll review that in class. And we've also done our cross multiply and divide, and we'll be reviewing that in class too. So it says, who was the fastest? Well, the fastest is going to be the biggest number. So Ben was the fastest because he can run 2 miles an hour. Who was the slowest? The slowest will be your smallest number. So Jill was the slowest. And how much slower was she? So 2 minus 1/2, will give me 1.5 miles per hour slower. Okay? Up here at the top, we're going to say speed equals miles per hour. And it says, how fast can you run? So while you obviously can't do this in class, you are all in athletics or have been at one time. Think of kind of how fast you ran your mile, and that's what you would put. So if you ran a 13-minute mile, then you need to do 60 divided by 13. Let's just do that math. Let's just say we ran a 13-minute mile.